Assalamualaikum and hello everyone. So today I will present about the introduction of the linkage of money, inflation and growth of Vietnam from 2010 to 2024. First of all is the background of the study. Economic growth, defined as the increase in a nation's output of goods and services over a specific period, is crucial for a country's development and attractiveness to investors. A nation's economic growth often signals favorable future development and can attract more foreign investment. This study examines the impact of inflation and money growth on Vietnam's economic development. High inflation can hinder growth by reducing consumption and investment, while controlled money growth can stimulate economic activity by making borrowing more affordable, thus boosting economic development. Next, statements for research problem. Understanding the intricate relationship between GDP, money growth, and inflation is crucial for analyzing the factors influencing Vietnam's economic growth. The relationship is more complex than simply associating higher inflation with lower GDP growth. Long-term relationship between inflation and growth can be either negative or neutral. Money growth further complicates this dynamic. Increased money growth can foster economic growth by providing market liquidity, lowering interest rates, and facilitating credit access. However, uncontrolled money growth can lead to inflation and asset bubbles, while higher money growth can enhance liquidity, reduce interest rates, and optimize resource allocation. Excessive growth risks triggering inflation and currency depreciation, potentially hampering economic growth and causing balance of payments issues. There are two objectives for our project. First, to investigate the impact of money growth and inflation on economic growth in Vietnam. Second, to identify how significantly the money growth and inflation rate will influence economic growth in Vietnam. Next, significance. For several reasons, this study, which looks at how inflation, money growth, and other factors impact Vietnam's economic development, is significant. It offers crucial empirical data to scholars, enabling them to better understand macroeconomic linkage of and can inspire the creation of fresh hypotheses and models. Students comprehend how economic concepts like inflation and money growth interact in the actual world. Economists and analysts may use the data to improve prediction accuracy and make risk assessment and planning easier. Most importantly, government authorities may utilize the study to develop more effective fiscal and monetary policies that will limit inflation and encourage long-term economic growth. This study has the potential to alter economic forecasting, education, research, and governance, all of which might have an effect on Vietnam's economic future.
Assalamualaikum. I am here to tell about the theoretical model of the literature review. The first one is money growth and growth. Money growth indicates that the consumers and firms have more money available in their hands, which leads to the increase in transaction, consumption, and investment. One of the reasons for the increase in money supply is when the central bank implemented a more flexible monetary policy by lowering the interest rates, which would attract borrowers to borrow money and increase the amount of money in customers' hands. Customers who possess more money have more purchasing power, which heightens consumers' demand. For companies who possess more money, would increase investment to either improve their business operation or create a new business idea. This new investment will increase aggregate supply to meet the aggregate demand, thus would help the economic growth. The second one is money growth and inflation. Money growth is good to help with recession. However, excessive monetary growth could lead to inflation. As we know, the increase in money supply would lead to an increase in demand for goods and services. So, the aggregate supply would increase as well in order to meet the aggregate demand. However, due to limitation of supply sources, firms could not supply that much goods and services that meets consumers' demand, which cause excessive demand in the market. This will put pressure on the price level, causing it to increase.
Now I'm going to explain about inflation and economic growth. The relationship between inflation and economic growth has been a significant topic in economic theory and policy for decades. Classical and neoclassical economists view inflation as a result of excessive money growth relative to real output, while Keynesian economics emphasizes aggregate demand. The Phillips curve shows a short-term inverse correlation between inflation and unemployment, but this relationship stabilizes in the long run. Endogenous growth theories, incorporating factors like technological progress and human capital, suggest moderate inflation can foster investment and innovation, while rational expectation theory suggests that only unanticipated inflation influences real economic variables. Threshold models explore non-linear relationships between inflation and growth, indicating a threshold level beyond which inflation adversely affects economic growth, particularly in developing countries.
Economic growth and inflation. The relationship between inflation and economic growth is nonlinear and complex. According to the study by Hang 2023, inflation is influenced by monetary, fiscal, and external factors and can both positively and negatively affect growth. Monica 2014 found an inflation threshold rate beyond which inflation harms growth. Below it, the impact can be positive or neutral. High inflation can increase inequality and cause social instability. Name et al. 2024. Short-term inflation is mainly driven by past fluctuation with minor influence from oil prices, exchange rate, and interest rate. Over time, the impact of past inflation on current inflation diminishes but remains significant. Van Dien 2020 suggests short-term inflation boosts growth through loose monetary policy, but long-term high inflation slow growth and increase bad debt. More research is needed to determine the optimal inflation rate for sustainable growth. Economic growth and broad money growth. The relationship between economic growth and money growth is complex. Deng et al. 2020 found that private investment is positively affected by monetary policies via broad money, domestic credit, and interest rate channels. Effective local government expenditure can positively influence economic growth. Pam et al. 2022. Efficient allocation and use of government capital enhance local economic performance. The optimal rate of money growth for reduced economic expansion is still unclear, requiring further research.
Monetary policy and inflation. Empirical studies have highlighted the critical role that the State Bank of Vietnam (SBV) in managing inflation through proactive monetary policy measures, particularly during the economic turbulence induced by the COVID-19 pandemic. The SPV mitigated inflation pressure the well-calibrated adjustment, including change to interest rate and open market operation to absorb excess liquidity. This innovation helped stabilize the Vietnam's dong and curtail speculative activities that could exacerbate inflation. By balancing inflation control with economic support, the SPV prevent runaway inflation, boosted investor in confidence, and contribute to economic stability during global volatility. Post-pandemic recovery and growth. Post-pandemic recovery has been a significant theme in the recent empirical research, with studies such as those by Byung and Hong 2021 exploring how Vietnam monetary and fiscal policy have supported economic recovery. Direct financial support to business and individual help mitigate the economic fallout from the pandemic contributing to economic regulations. The State Bank of Vietnam SBV lower interest rate and provide liquidity support to the banking sector, facilitating credit flow and investment. Key sectors like manufacturing, service, and export-oriented industry experience robust recovery. During ever economic growth, however, sustaining long-term growth in challenges due to the global uncertainties such as geopolitical tension and fluctuating market.
As you can see from the previous slide, there is a table that contains economic data of inflation, GDP growth, and money growth from the year 2010 to 2024. As what we can analyze from the data is, from the year 2010 to 2024, there have been exhibited substantial volatility in the changes of inflation rate. The highest inflation rate was on 2010, which is 9.1%, and on 2011, which is 18.7%, indicated intense inflationary pressures. There have been steady decline to 4.1% by 2014, reflecting successful monetary policy and stabilization efforts. Further, it decreased to 0.6% in 2015, showing effective inflation control. Between 2016 and 2019, inflation stabilized between 2.7% and 3.5%, suggesting well-managed inflation and stable economic conditions. Now I would like to explain about GDP growth. GDP growth maintained a robust average growth rate around 6%. Despite of having a high inflation on 2010 and 2011, there have been a consistent growth rate on 2010 and 11, which is 6.4%. The growth rate rebounded to 6.4% in 2014 and peaked at 7.5% in 2018. This demonstrates that there have been strong economic resilience and stability.
For money growth rate, Vietnam showed significant instability because there was a decline in 2010, which was negative 3.0, suggesting that monetary policies were adapted to curb inflation. There were some positive of growth rates during the years, reflecting adjustments in monetary policies to balance inflation control and economic growth. Overall, Vietnam has demonstrated economic resilience and effectively adapting monetary policies to address inflation and growth challenges. Because of Vietnam's successful management of inflation, and they have sustained GDP growth during the mid-decade, it laid a solid foundation for future economic growth or advancements.
In conclusion, the study on the linkages of money, inflation and growth of Vietnam from 2010 to 2024 reveals a complex interplay between money growth, inflation and economic growth in Vietnam. Over the years, Vietnam's GDP growth experienced significant fluctuation, with a notable decline during the COVID-19 pandemic and a subsequent rebound in 2022. Projected GDP growth is expected to slow down to 3.7% in 2023 before gradually increasing to 5.5% in 2024 and 6.0% in 2025. The study highlights the necessity for carefully managed monetary and fiscal policies to balance economic stimulation and inflation control, ensuring sustainable development. This research is significant for its empirical data, providing valuable insights for scholars, economists, and policymakers to enhance economic forecasting, risk assessment, and policy formulation. Overall, Vietnam's economic management showcases resilience and adaptability, successfully navigating inflationary pressures and pandemic impacts, with future policies needing to maintain this balance for long-term growth and stability. Thank you.